Yeah, I mean, that's a huge part of it. They've both done that, and that's been very encouraging.
Day 12 of Brown's training camp, and the guy who actually calls the plays just sat down with reporters and said something that Cleveland fans have been waiting weeks to hear. Not a leak, not a source close to the building. Travis Switzer himself, the first-year offensive coordinator, on the record, talking about how the quarterback competition is really going. And what he said was not hedging, it was not coach speak, it was genuinely, specifically positive. We're breaking down every word. Let's set the scene first, because context matters here. Travis Switzer is not some retread hire. He spent 9 seasons in Baltimore, the last 3 as the run game coordinator for a Ravens offense that led the entire NFL in rushing during that stretch. He was in the room while Lamar Jackson developed into an MVP-level quarterback and while Derrick Henry kept piling up rushing touchdowns into his 30s. Todd Monken brought him to Cleveland specifically because he knows how to build an offense around what a quarterback does well, not force a scheme onto a guy who doesn't fit it. So when Switzer talks about the quarterback room, it carries weight. And this room is not a quiet one. Joe Flacco is gone. Deshaun Watson is still working back from 2 torn Achilles tendons and hasn't played a snap in over a year. Dylan Gabriel is in the mix. And then there's Shedeur Sanders, who got thrown into the fire as a rookie last season, took over at halftime in Baltimore when Gabriel went down with a concussion and never gave the job back. 7 starts, over 1,400 passing yards, and a performance against Tennessee where he threw for over 360 yards and accounted for 4 total touchdowns in a game the Browns still somehow lost. That's the backdrop. A former first-round bust of a season for the franchise, a new head coach, a new coordinator, and a genuine open competition at the most important position on the field. Reporters have been asking Switzer variations of the same question for 2 weeks now. How's the quarterback battle going? Who's ahead? And for the most part, he's given the standard answer, that it's ongoing, that it's competitive, that nobody's been named the guy yet. But on day 12, something shifted in how he talked about it. He was asked directly about where things stand with the 2 primary competitors for the job, and instead of the usual deflection, he gave reporters something with actual substance. He didn't dodge. He didn't say it's too early. He leaned into specifics about what each guy is doing well and where the growth has shown up. That's rare for a coach this deep into an unsettled competition, and it's exactly why this clip is worth slowing down and listening to closely. It's also worth remembering how loud the outside noise has been around this exact question. National voices have gone back and forth for months. Some analysts have insisted the job is basically Watson's the second he's medically cleared, contract and pedigree doing the talking. Others have pointed to what Sanders actually did on the field last season and argued the tape should carry more weight than a jersey number or a signing bonus. Cleveland beat reporters have mostly stayed in the middle, describing this as a real, ongoing competition rather than a formality either direction. Switzer's answer on day 12 is the first time the guy actually running the offense gave the public something concrete to hang on to, instead of another round of speculation from outside the building.
I mean, we don't have to make it tomorrow, so I would say that that's probably a question for another few weeks. But both guys are developing very nicely. We know they're different players, but the areas that they need to improve on, they've both done that, and that's been very encouraging.
Think about Denzel Boston and Casey and just coming in. I guess how pleased are you guys with how quickly they've picked up on everything in this system so far?
Notice what he didn't do there. He didn't rank them. He didn't say one guy's ahead. So what does both developing nicely actually mean when you dig into how differently these 2 quarterbacks operate? This is where it gets interesting, because Switzer isn't talking about 2 clones running the same checklist. Watson and Sanders are about as different as 2 quarterbacks in the same room can be. Watson is a $230 million, fully guaranteed veteran trying to prove his body can hold up after 2 Achilles tears wiped out an entire season. Sanders is a rookie who took over on the fly last year with almost no runway, learning an entirely new verbiage, an entirely new operation on the job in real games with the whole league watching and picking apart every mistake. Switzer touched on that gap earlier in the same session when he talked about what rookie quarterbacks specifically have to overcome. Some guys haven't even huddled before in college. Getting under center is new. It's a brand new language because every single offense in this league has its own terminology, and getting comfortable enough with that verbiage to command the huddle, to catch when a teammate lines up wrong, to fix it on the fly and process fast, that stuff only comes from reps, lots of them. Then there's the physical piece. Switzer made a point of saying that everybody in that quarterback room now understands they're going to take real hits in these evaluations, spring included. That's not a small detail. It means the coaching staff isn't grading based on a clean, scripted look. They're grading based on what a guy does when the pocket collapses and the play doesn't go the way it was drawn up. He also touched on how the staff is building continuity around the offensive line while all of this plays out, which matters more than people give it credit for when you're judging a quarterback's growth. Switzer admitted the staff doesn't have as much certainty up front as they'd like, given some injuries early in camp, guys nicked up and in and out of the rotation. But he framed that as a silver lining too, because it's forced the staff to get extended looks at other linemen who might not have gotten those reps otherwise. A young quarterback learning to process fast behind a line that's still sorting itself out is a tougher test than learning behind a finished product, and Switzer didn't shy away from admitting that's exactly the environment both quarterbacks have had to develop in. And that's exactly why the operating room line he used stands out so much. Switzer talked about the mental side of playing under pressure, about how the more time a quarterback has to make a decision, the less anxiety he's going to feel in the moment. He compared it to something almost nobody expects from an NFL coordinator.
When you talk about saving the 8 seconds, is that as simple as you just want the quarterback to be able to look at the defense for longer?
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge part of it. Anytime that you're under pressure trying to make a decision, the more time that you have, the less pressure you're going to feel. So, I mean, we talk about that all the time. Like, you wouldn't want somebody who's operating on you to walk into the operating room late, sweating, like, doesn't look like he's prepared, right? So
that single comparison tells you more about how Switzer coaches quarterbacks than almost anything else he said all day. And it connects directly to a detail about Shedeur specifically that most outlets are going to skip right past. Because the operating room line isn't just a nice quote, it's literally describing the exact plan Switzer laid out for shaving time off the pre-snap operation. He referenced what the staff calls the 4 twos, an internal target to save 8 total seconds before every single snap. 2 seconds getting the call in faster, 2 seconds getting to the huddle faster, play calls trimmed down so the huddle itself takes 2 seconds less, and 2 seconds getting to the line of scrimmage faster. He was blunt that this starts with the quarterback, but it's really an everybody problem on offense. That's the operational side. The developmental side is just as telling. Switzer was asked directly about the quiet work that doesn't show up on a highlight reel, the stuff nobody's filming, and he described something specific. Quarterbacks in that room practicing their own cadence away from the field, sometimes in meetings, sometimes at home, using recordings of themselves so they can actually hear what they sound like and adjust. It sounds almost too simple to matter, but for a rookie learning a brand new system on the fly, hearing your own cadence back and catching the hitches nobody points out for you, that's the kind of self-coaching habit that separates guys who plateau from guys who keep climbing. Switzer also brought up something bigger picture when asked about the young players across the offense generally, not isolated to one position. He said the ability to take something out of a meeting room, carry it into a walkthrough, and then actually apply it on the field without needing 10 reps to get it right, that's a huge part of being a pro. He said it's been really good to watch and that the staff is excited about it. Again, not a specific name attached in that particular answer, but it lines up with exactly the profile reporters have described watching from Sanders throughout this camp, a guy who processes fast and doesn't need the same rep count as everybody else to lock something in. None of this is Switzer picking a starter. He's been consistent about that all camp. But stack these answers next to each other, the operating room analogy, the 4 twos tempo plan, the cadence recordings, the meeting room to field carryover, and you start to see a coordinator who isn't just watching 2 guys compete. He's actively building both of them toward the exact standard he needs at that position, and by his own account, both are meeting it. Switzer went even further when he was pressed on why some of that early season sloppiness around cadence and operation has cleaned up compared to where it was earlier in camp. He said it's genuinely come from both sides. The guys up front have gotten used to hearing it from whoever's under center, and the quarterbacks themselves have kept refining it, so it's not one guy dragging the group forward, it's the whole unit tightening up together. That kind of answer doesn't happen if a competition is lopsided. Coordinators don't talk about mutual growth on offense when one guy is clearly a lock and the other is just keeping a seat warm.
Yeah, I mean, you just practice it. Like it may feel weird, but you're in the quarterback room or you're at home and you're just practicing your own cadence. There's recordings of it as well that they can listen to get feedback, to hear themselves. So yeah, I mean, it's pretty much as simple as that.
How important is it to get your starting 11 working together as soon as possible?
Simple to describe, not simple to actually do consistently for months on end. And Switzer had one more answer that might be the most encouraging number in this entire update. Here's the part that should matter most to anyone trying to gauge where this quarterback competition actually stands. Switzer was asked what's driving the overall improvement in the passing game this camp, and his answer went beyond just individual quarterback development. He said part of it is simply that the offense is done installing. Spring ball covered the install, but now it's not brand new information every single day the way it was earlier in the process. That matters because a settled install means less mental clutter and more room to actually execute at full speed. But then he got specific about the quarterbacks themselves. He said, without singling anyone out, but talking about the room as a whole, that all of the quarterbacks have grown leaps and bounds in getting through their progressions faster, in knowing where their outlets and checkdowns are, and in actually getting the ball to those guys at the right moment. That's not a small compliment. Progression speed and checkdown recognition are two of the hardest things to teach a young quarterback, and they're usually the last things to show up before a guy is trusted with real reps in real games. Switzer also touched on how the staff plans to use personnel groupings depending on matchup, another layer of complexity a young quarterback has to command at the line. He was clear that whatever they run each week, the goal is to force a defense to deal with multiple looks, whether that's tempo, personnel changes, or a run game that makes a defense declare its intentions before the snap. All of that requires a quarterback who's not just physically capable, but mentally fast enough to communicate it in real time. And by Switzer's own account, that's exactly where this group has taken the biggest jump. Put it all together and you get a coordinator on day 12 of camp who isn't handing out empty praise. He gave specific, technical, coachable reasons for saying both of his top quarterback competitors are developing very nicely. That's about as encouraging an update as this fan base could have realistically expected at this point in August. Switzer also made a point of describing how those personnel packages get built, around what specific players do well, rather than forcing a system onto them. And he said that philosophy applies across the whole offense, not just one position. Multiple receiver groupings, moving pass catchers around to create the matchups they want. None of that works without a quarterback who can process it in real time. The fact that he's describing this level of offensive flexibility as something both quarterbacks are handling, not just the veteran, is exactly the kind of detail that gets buried in a transcript but says a lot out loud.
Yeah, I think part of it is just getting used to the offense. I mean, we're now done installing, so it's not, I mean, we did all this in the spring, but it's not all new every day anymore. So I think that's a big piece of it. There's a lot of variables, right? I mean, there's that piece, there's the protection piece, right? And being under pressure. There's miscommunication on routes with wideouts and a quarterback that has to get ironed out. There's a lot of things.
So where does that actually leave things heading into the preseason? Nobody's been named the starter. Switzer was careful more than once in this same session to say he doesn't need to make that call tomorrow, and that the real evaluation runs through the joint practices and all 3 preseason games still ahead. He specifically called joint practices one of the most valuable evaluation tools outside of actual games, because it's the only chance before the regular season to see how a quarterback performs against a completely different defensive structure than the one he's grown used to in camp. That part hasn't changed, but what has changed is the tone. 2 weeks ago, the answers were vague. On day 12, the offensive coordinator gave reporters something with real substance, specific praise for both quarterbacks, a detailed look at how the offense is being built around whoever wins the job, and a level of detail about the process that suggests this staff genuinely believes they have 2 capable options rather than one clear guy carrying a camp body. For a Shedeur Sanders fanbase that spent the entire offseason wondering if the front office was ever really giving him a fair shot after last year's chaos, this is about as close to a green light as Travis Switzer is going to give in the middle of August. It also lines up with what other voices around this team have said all camp. The belief inside the building has reportedly been that this stays a genuine two-man competition through the bulk of August, decided by what happens in the 3 preseason games, not settled early behind closed doors. Switzer's Day 12 comments are the clearest public confirmation yet that the coaching staff is treating it exactly that way, developing both quarterbacks at full speed instead of quietly grooming one and letting the other take reps for appearances. So here's the real question heading into these preseason games. Based on everything Switzer just laid out, the development, the tempo work, the progression speed, do you think Shedeur Sanders has already done enough to win this job outright? Or does Deshaun Watson's experience and that fully guaranteed contract mean he gets the benefit of the doubt no matter what happens in August? Drop your answer below. Smash like and subscribe.